Hello, you guys, and welcome back to the podcast. So, over the last couple weeks, I've been asking you guys to submit your questions, and some of them are kind of like quick, easy answer, and then some of them are fucking long and really require a bit of depth and a little bit of like insight that I think that maybe I've never talked about in the past. And one of these actually just caught my eye. So today for the podcast, I'm going to be answering a very great question, but also a very common question that I think a lot of people are afraid to ask. And it actually makes sense that you guys are afraid to ask because I've done Q&As where, you just respond via Instagram. And I've also done Q&As where you can submit anonymous questions. And this was submitted anonymously. So the question is, if you were starting your business from scratch today, what would you do differently, knowing how crowded and noisy the space has become? And this question is coming from like the online space of like online, TikTok, master resale rights, coaching, consulting, kind of that space, just to give context. With so many coaches selling similar programs and everyone trying to be the loudest, what's your advice for standing out and actually connecting with the right audience? So the reason that I actually wanted to talk about this question is a couple different parts. One, to give a little bit of insight into how I started my business, because I actually got a question around that as well of like, how did you start your business? What does that look like? But also just to talk about like, what does it actually look like to stand out? What does it look like to be someone who can, quietly but impactfully share your expertise and your knowledge and get clients without like just having to outdo what someone else is doing? So I want to talk about this question, I guess, in a couple parts. But the first thing I want to say is that people are typically noisier when they feel pressure to find something that makes them stand out because they don't actually inherently know what that thing is. So I've now coached probably 300, 400 different individuals. I've worked with web designers and I've worked with agency owners and coaches and consultants and stylists and event planners. And I have several doctors and chiropractors as clients. And here's the thing that I've always noticed: people that tend to be louder or people that tend to try to shove wins and financial things and just success in your face, they typically do that because they're trying to basically say it's impossible to not be successful, versus being able to just say like, look at my ability to create success through like my frameworks, my process, my methods. That is one, easier to do transparently. It's easier to do that. But if you don't actually understand what you bring to the table, it feels fucking impossible. So what do we default to? We basically default like, look at the success, look at the wins, look at this amazingness that I create, because we think if we just pound that down people's throat, it will get people to move forward. And so it's funny, the way that people are showing up on social media, the way that people are trying to grow, I think is actually significantly harder. Now, there's also the counter argument of, if you shove down financial wins, if you shove down like, look how amazing I am in people's throats, like that's a lot easier to do without having to talk through your process. But again, as you really start to understand yourself and why you solve problems better than others and what makes you unique, I promise you, it's actually much easier to just talk about how you solve problems. Like, it's the easiest thing in the world. So that's the thing I'll say. That's actually one of the most common things I notice with like inexperienced business owners is they just shove how happy their clients are, how amazing they are, how quickly they had success, because they think that's the easiest route. And actually it's harder. And it also just shows that you don't really know what you're talking about. So that's the one thing I just want to disclaimer before we get into this question. But here's a little bit of my insight here. And I actually want to give you guys a little bit of my personal story, because even if you are not a business owner right now, if you are in corporate, if you are trying to scale up the corporate ladder, if you are trying to, get that job promotion, so often people assume that authority is the thing that is going to get them there. And I want to explain what I mean by authority. Authority is testimonials if you're a business owner, right? Look how many of my clients have had this success. Look how quickly my clients had this success. Look how much money my clients made if you're in the make money space. By the way, if you're not in the make money space, we can talk about that as well. But you get it, right? Like this, like, look how loud, look how amazing, look how in your face I am. And that applies to like resumes, that applies to the way that you interview, just all the flashy things, right? We think that that justifies why we should have more clients, why people should be obsessed with working with us, why we should get the job promotion. We assume that those things are good. When really what I've realized in my journey of being a business owner is conviction actually outweighs authority almost every single time. So I want to talk about this a little bit through my own journey so that you guys can kind of take this and think about this if you feel like you're struggling to stand out, or if you feel like you just are feeling lost in a sea of everyone saying and doing the same things. Because unfortunately now with social media, with AI, with just, access to information, it's very difficult, I think, for a lot of people to feel comfortable standing out and like standing in their own, authority and own gifts and talents. So I have started 2 different businesses, both through social media, both in the kind of coaching and consulting space. So back in 2021, going into 2022, I started my financial coaching journey. It literally came out of fucking nowhere. I was on social media talking about wanting to become a millionaire in a year. I was doing this like online challenge because I was like, oh, if I do this every single day for a year, like people will follow, right? So every day I was like, this is what I'm investing in. This is what I'm doing. Like I literally just shared my journey. And about a month and a half later, I saw someone talking about coaching and I'm like, what the fuck is coaching? And then all of a sudden I just like literally made up on the spot. I was like, I'm a financial coach. And I literally just like pushed that online and literally like my business blew up. We did 100K in 6 months and then we had a 50K month and we were a consistent 50K months literally while I was working a full-time job. And then I quit that summer and went full-time, right? So financial coaching I started. At the time, I didn't really have a lot of people to compare myself to. I actually didn't even know that this whole like online space thing was a thing. And so all I did was like lean into what I was best at. So from the comparison standpoint of authority and conviction, I was a conviction girl. I didn't have any clients. The only authority I had was my own story. But all I did is I was like, I know what I'm really good at. Like I'm really good at helping people take your investing journey, your short-term investing and long-term investing journey, your savings process, your ability to budget. I was really good at making it kind of all fit together in a perfect little puzzle. And everyone else was just like, this is what you invest in. And I was like, wait, no, but that's not what you invest in because what if you really don't like, high volatile stocks? What if you'd prefer maybe ETFs or maybe you are someone who wants to diversify across like a lot of different companies instead of 1 or 2? Like there were so many different things, right? But I felt like I really had a clear understanding of what I was best at. And so it's interesting when I started that business, I didn't have the authority. I only literally just had like my own journey, but all I did is I leaned into like what I was best at. And what I was best at is taking all the moving parts of a financial process and a financial kind of plan and making it make sense so that any single person that worked with me understood their goals, what financial actions made sense for their goals, and how to apply it currently, but then also how to apply it as their goals and priorities and financial situation change. So if your income doubles, the way that you organize your budget is going to double. The way that maybe you think about Roth IRA versus putting more into your 401k, that might change because your retirement strategy changed. Like I looked at all those pieces as literally individual puzzle pieces and I could put together the full puzzle for someone. I could help them understand what that looked like. And that was my gift. So I made $500,000 in a little over a year because all I did was literally speak about my gift. All I did was say, this is what I bring to the table. This is what I'm best at. And all I did was market that. And it's funny, a lot of people say like, well, no one's going to hire me because I don't have a lot of clients and testimonials. I didn't have a single person ask me how many clients or ask for a testimonial. I don't even think I asked about a testimonial until I had done 500, 600K. I have a really funny post on my Buy the Blazer Instagram where I literally said like, I didn't have a website until I had already done 600K of sales. Like I was the fucking website. And I don't know a better example of how fucking convicted I was in that approach of I didn't need to prove anything because I wasn't an imposter. A lot of the times when people struggle with imposter syndrome, sometimes it's because they are an imposter. It's like business coaches who are amazing at marketing. And then they're like, oh, I'm also doing sales and offers and this. Just go be a marketing coach or like go be a sales coach or whatever it is. Like a lot of times we actually have imposter syndrome because we're trying to fit in a mold that someone else has already created instead of just making our fucking own. I wanted to share that because a lot of people don't understand how I scaled so quickly. I literally, first of all, outside of keeping it simple, the strategy piece, I literally just was like, this is what I'm best at. So here we are. I'm in financial coaching. I'm fucking crushing it. I have no authority, obviously, until much later in my journey. And then once I hit a certain point, I was like, oh, I should probably share testimonials. I should probably talk about client wins. And then I started to integrate that into my process. But again, we had already done $500,000 in a year. And, people can have a lot of opinions about money, but making $500,000 in your first year of business with no fucking clue of what you're doing, I think a lot of people would be really happy with that. So again, authority was not part of the process. It was all conviction. So that business scaled. I leaned into conviction. I actually felt like around that time is kind of when I was introduced to this online space. So I really didn't know what this online space was, right? I didn't even hire my first coach until we were at the 100-ish K mark. And then we obviously started to scale more just because I started to understand like offer suites, and I was like, oh, we could do like a group program. Like I started to like kind of put together the strategy piece. But again, like our first 100K, and really I credit most of the other six figures that we made the sequential month on conviction. Then I am introduced to this online space, and I realized that my background is marketing and sales, and I really understand sales. And I also was introduced to group coaching. I was in a mastermind, and let me tell you, those bitches could not sell. Now, they could market, and they were very loud. They were like, look how much success I had. And that's, I think, when I started to fall in the trap of being like, oh, I have to show how much success I've had, or else people won't hire me, which is funny because I had at that time 40 clients, and no one had asked me about testimonials. But this is when I actually fell into the authority is the most important thing kind of trap, I guess you could say. And so at this time now I'm in a mastermind, and I realize like women don't know how to sell. Women don't understand if you just take the same sales process and integrate it into a piece of content, people will buy from that. It was all the things that I was actually doing with the first business. I just had never put like a process behind it. And so here I am now starting my second business. And I did the exact fucking opposite of what I've done with the first business, which is I was like, I need to just show how fucking successful I am. Instead of just talking about like my own knowledge, my own experience, and just having conviction and belief behind what I was good at. And I did the fucking same mistake that a lot of you guys do. I was like, I need to be a business coach. Now, I actually am extremely good at offer suites. I'm very good at team management, and I'm amazing at systems. So I definitely fall under the bucket of a business coach. But if I'm very honest with myself, I should have started in the coaching and consulting world from a business standpoint under sales. I should have been a sales coach. I should have leaned into sales. That was where I had the most confidence. And then so when I started my second business, marketing and social media was just kind of more of a natural gift because I was good at sales. So again, I should have been a sales coach that talks about, how to take your sales knowledge and integrate it into the way that you have conviction. That was my gift. But yet again, I felt so much pressure from this online world to be like a business coach that I launched this like business coaching mastermind. And again, I had multiple offers, all this stuff. I did exactly what everyone told me to do, which made me feel like an imposter because again, I wasn't just leaning into what I was best at. And yeah, I launched my second business, and I immediately felt heaviness. I questioned my pricing. And for the first time in this year-long journey of my business, I was like, I don't really know 100% what I'm doing, because I needed to copy and paste, or I felt this pressure to copy and paste kind of what was like expected of me as a business coach. You have a launching mastermind, you have a scaling mastermind, you blah, blah, blah. Like I just lost my way. And I think like the biggest like takeaway in the lesson in this is like conviction trumps authority all the fucking time. It's why I got every job I ever interviewed for. I've literally never interviewed for a company that didn't offer me a job, because I had conviction. I was always the least qualified. I was always the person coming in with the smallest resume in comparison to other people. And I never had the best GPA. I was a solid 3.5 student, which is not a bad thing. But when you're interviewing at companies that literally like look for highest performers, a 3.5 is not overly exciting. In fact, my first week at the unknown sales company, I don't know why I don't say their name, but my first week at Paycom, actually, this is like a horrible story, but I remember I was sitting there and we were giving an example about how we hire like really talented people and very successful students. And so my boss at the time was like, oh, Ashley, like you just graduated college, you're the newest here, like what'd you get? And I was like, oh, a 3.5. And literally the guy next to me is like, you got a 3.5 at Missouri State? I didn't realize you were a fucking idiot. Anyway, just to tell you about that culture. But that was my like first week at this job. And I was like, are you, and I literally went home and I cried. And I was like, I just quit my job that I was amazing at to come here, and you guys are shitting on me for a 3.5 GPA. So anyway, that's like a side story. But like truly, in every situation I've been in, my conviction was the thing that got me where I am today. So I think like coming back to this question, because you were very like clear on like, with so many coaches selling similar programs and everyone trying to be the loudest, what's your advice? Stand in your conviction. Stand in what you are best at. Do not fall into this mold that you have to do things any fucking way. None of my clients scale like I do. Every single one of them has a unique flair. Every single one of them came in, almost every client of mine the last 2 months, and they said, I think I'm building something that I don't fucking love. If you think you need to be louder, it's because you're probably going outside of what you're meant to be doing. If you feel like you have imposter syndrome, it's probably because you're trying to do things that make you feel like an imposter. You don't have to have testimonials, client wins, massive success in something in the past to be good at it moving forward. if you only focus on doing something that you already know that you can do better than the person that you're trying to help, especially in the coaching world. Obviously, done for you services and everything else a little bit different. But a lot of people might then be like, but Ashley, you say messy action, jump in before you're ready. Yeah, but know what you're like best at. Don't feel like you have to try to sell all these different things or do all these different things on a day-to-day basis just because like having more is better. Being the best at that one thing is always going to trump. And I want to give an example that I gave a client the other day, and we literally had this conversation, and then literally that week she like changed her offer, literally sold out a program. Like, it was insane. But I gave the example as far as like having more and being like, look at all this quantity of things that I can do versus quality. And I said, name your favorite artist and name your least favorite. And she goes, Taylor Swift and Kanye West. Shocker, right? And so I told her, I said, if I could give you, you have two different options. One Taylor Swift ticket. You get one evening out, great ticket or great seats. You get to see Taylor Swift. You get to experience the Eras tour, like $3,000 value. You get that, right? And she's like, wait, can I just take that now? I said, no, wait. I said, or I will give you 50 tickets to different Kanye West shows valued over $1 million. Which one? And she goes, immediately Taylor Swift. Didn't even have to have a question. People assume that quantity is better than quality. And the reason that Taylor Swift is amazing at what she does, and the reason that she has the followers and the people that are like, I will pay $3,000 for one ticket, but I would literally over question spending $100 on someone else's ticket. The reason that she has that authority is because the conviction in who she is and what she does. She is so consistent. She is so who she is. She's goofy. She's quirky. She's weird. She, stands up for what she believes in. Like, she owns her shit. And it's not necessarily I'm saying that other artists don't by any means, but the reason that every single client then that I've asked that question to this week was like Taylor Swift is like, you know what you're getting there. You have so much belief in like what her experience is going to be because she owns that. And I think that there's just something to be said about business owners who lose their belief in themselves and try to oversaturate or overcompensate with more, or like, oh, I need to go lower value, or or lower ticket, or I need to do this. When like, I really think a lot of you guys could double or triple your prices, simplify your offer to something that actually has less deliverables, less shit included, and you'd probably have a business that 3 or 4X's this year. And if you don't believe me, I have probably 50 clients, not to go to the authority route, 50 clients that I could give you as examples of that. But the reason that a lot of the times now, even still, clients don't need those 50 examples when they hire me, when I'm talking to them in a sales process, is my belief around the ability to scale simply. My conviction on that is so fucking strong. But yet it's funny, in my first business, I just started with that and I crushed it. And my second business, it's now taken 2 years to really just have the belief in what I do. And yes, I can help with a lot of different things. Yes, I have a lot of different gifts, but I know what I'm best at. And it is for business owners like you who look at all these moving parts and say, but I got to do this, I got to have this, I got to have this, I got to do this, I got to be here, I got to do that. And you literally have created this messy, heavy thing. And you're like, what if my business could be crushing delivery, feeling really easy and not even overwhelmed in a sales process, closing those clients in a 20-minute conversation and putting out content that makes people say, holy shit, this person is so good at what they do. I have to hire her today. What if your business could just be those 3 things? Yes, there's always going to be the financials. Yes, there might be some systems. Yes, there might be some team. That's a business. Having an offer, having support, having a service that has an amazing transformation, being able to sell that service and being able people to see and get visibility around what that is so you have people to sell to. That's it. So I just wanted to like share that with you guys because even as someone who's now scaled 2 businesses, I will always say that I did a better job with my first one. I will always say that my ability to market felt easier with my first one. I will always say that sales felt easier with my first one, because I stood in conviction and I didn't think that I had to be louder or have more authority in the space to get people to notice me. So I hope really in thinking through this or just hearing me talk about it, this is like my biggest takeaway for you guys is like figure out what you're best at. Even if you don't know, hire someone to help you identify that. That's like the biggest, most amazing thing that you can do. I have calls with clients almost every other week where we literally like map out what like their thing is. But figure out like what you're best at. It doesn't need to be big. It doesn't need to be loud. It doesn't need to be financial. It can be anything. But if you own that with full conviction, if you show up and you know what you're talking about, you feel confident and master that, and you can grow within that, the amount of money and success and the clients and the just easiness that you will feel will always trump saying, I just need to be bigger and louder and I need to show more success because that's what's going to make people want to hire me. And so I hope that that's really helpful. I hope that that like encourages you guys if you're struggling with kind of finding your voice right now. And ultimately, I'm always happy to answer any questions on that. So if you are sitting there and you're feeling a little bit lost in your business, I'm always wanting to help you guys just get that initial clarity and direction. So feel free, if you're not already following By the Blazer, to check out that account. You can kind of see how we help businesses get that clarity, get that conviction, and then bring that into their marketing, sales, and delivery process. But send me a DM if this episode was helpful for you, or if you're the individual who sent the anonymous message. I obviously have no idea who you are, but this was such an incredible question. I'd be happy to talk further about it with you. So until then, I'll see you guys next week.